Hey Property Insiders, I'm Victoria Stonehouse and this is episode 170 of the Inside Property Investing podcast. Today we've got a very special episode of the podcast to celebrate International Women's Day, and I'm joined by 5 of the most inspirational female property investors. I'm going to ask them a variety of questions to understand a little bit more about their journey in the property investing world. Let's get started. Tell me a little bit about you, your background and your current business in property.
Hi, so my name's Katrina Jones and I am the owner and founder of Kendall Bailey, a boutique rent-to-rent company here in York, and I also am the founder of the Kendall Bailey Rent-to-Rent Academy, which trains, teaches and inspires other property investors how to invest successfully using the rent-to-rent investment strategy.
Hi, I am Nicole Bremner of East 8 and London Central Developments, and we are a property developer, investor and construction company. And I started in property probably about over 5 years ago. I started more casually just doing my own property, my own homes, for example, about 7 years ago.
Hi, my name's Jackie Tomes and my property business is Tomes Homes. The idea was born back in January 2013, but it didn't really start to ramp up and get off the ground until the end of 2014. And our big aim is always to be building a portfolio of single lets. So that's what we focus on. And as we've grown, that means we're now focusing on buying blocks of flats and also shops with residential above that we can convert into flats. So that's our primary focus. But alongside this, a real passion of mine is business strategy and helping other people in property to make sure that they are building their property businesses in a way that is sustainable and scalable in the long term. So I'm always balancing out those two different sides, the property investing and the strategy consultancy side.
Hello, I'm Liz Lanfear of Property Angels and Multi-Let Leads. I'm a chartered librarian and I first started investing in property 17 years ago when I was 30 years old. My main strategy has always been young professional multi-lets.
Hi, I'm Emilia Newman. I'm the founder of mycityspaces.com. We provide serviced accommodation to corporate and leisure travellers in the UK. We currently use the rent-to-rent model as investment strategies, and we've been doing that really successfully since 2011.
What got you interested in property investing in the first place? And at what point did you realise it could be a career for you?
So what got me interested in property in the first place was doing my own home and realising that property was something that I could fit in around my 3 children. And when I realised how flexible it was, I thought that this would be a great opportunity for me to get involved in on a larger scale.
I decided to get into property back in 2013 because I was getting that sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach at the end of a holiday because I didn't want to go back to work. And I'd seen my parents do a couple of single lets, and so I'd seen property work, just not on a big scale. So when I found out that I could actually use property and grow that like a business and work with people who've got cash but perhaps no time, knowledge, inclination to actually invest in property themselves and actually work together with them to build our own business and to help them at the same time, I was really excited about the possibilities.
I first became interested in property investing when back in 1999 I was on holiday visiting friends in Australia, and my friends put me on a bus with the audio of Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and at the end of my journey and the end of listening to the book, I decided that it was a strategy that I wanted to use so that I would have the choice of whether or not to work if I was lucky enough to start a family.
Well, what got me interested in property was growing up as a little kid, my mom had always had properties that she rented out. And then obviously when we came to the UK, it's something that I'd always wanted to get into, but the hefty deposits were a big barrier for me because at the time I had children and bills to pay, and my background is actually nursing. So I started to look at the rent-to-rent model, because to me that was the only realistic way I could get into the business. And then I realized that I could make an actual career into this and actually build a brand because of the low financial commitments that you need to make at the beginning, and also the returns were really, really high. So to me that was a really attractive model for me to build on from there.
What advantages do you see being a female in this industry?
Being female, but also being young, and many people do tell me that I'm about 12 years old. I'm a little bit older than that, but I've kind of got two things. I've got the female thing and the age thing, which means in a good way I kind of have the element of surprise, because many people, you know, builders or estate agents or whatever, they look at you and their first perception is that you're probably just buying your house to live in and it's going to be a heart-based decision. So once you start to demonstrate some knowledge and experience in what you're doing, you kind of can really take people by surprise, which can be good. It has its disadvantages as well, but it can mean that you're in a stronger position because the other side just wasn't expecting it. And I do quite like the element of surprise.
The main advantage that I see as a female property investor is that I am able to express my emotional intelligence. And I know some people would listen to that and think, well, there's no place for emotion in business. Well, I actually beg to differ. I have used my emotional sat-nav guidance system, if you like, to help me get out of really, really tricky situations. So I feel like as a female, I'm better, it's more acceptable, if you like, for me to be able to use my emotional intelligence to make really, really important business decisions.
So one of the main advantages that I tend to see as a female property investor is that people tend not to see us coming. So quite often they don't expect us to maybe produce the results that we produce, or go as hard as we really go when we do what we do. And just from my experience, you know, when I share my results, you know, mentors in the past have said, oh, I assume that was you and your partner who created that business, or, you know, things like that. And it's just brilliant, really, because you just can sneak up on people. They don't see you coming.
And on the flip side, do you see any barriers to being a female in this industry?
The main barrier that I have faced as a woman investing in property has been myself and my own limiting beliefs about what I believed that I was capable of.
I don't think I've faced any barriers because I'm a female, but I think, you know, for everyone, the barriers that you see or feel are internal, because I'm just one of those people that feel like if I want to do something, then I'll do it. So I've not faced any barriers as a female property investor. So if there's something that you really want to do, and you know, all you need to do is to make sure that you've got the right guidance, and then you go out there and get it.
Do you know, I really don't face any barriers being a female. I don't think that barriers is a female or male thing. I think really barriers come from your own self-belief, the amount of knowledge that you have and expertise that you have. You know, sometimes it's a little bit challenging the first time you manage a building team, or, you know, when you're dealing with male business owners, wondering if do they take me seriously? Do they really know quite how much business I mean? But again, that's down to my confidence and self-belief, and it's not really a female thing. It's a human thing. And it's the same really with builders and things like that. We say, we wonder if they take us seriously, but at the end of the day, if you know how to manage a building team effectively and you've got all of your facts and you're organised and you're doing everything properly, then there's nothing really to get in the way. So it really does go back to experience, knowledge and expertise rather than being a female or not.
You do face some barriers being a woman in this industry. I remember distinctively putting an offer in on a property, and the agent got really annoyed with me because I had proof of funds for quite a few million, but not the full amount. And when I told him that I had access to the additional funds, he told me to go back to playing with my doll's house. And that was an interesting comment for me, and made me realize that some people don't view women as valid property developers, but that's so small. I really don't feel that there are many barriers for women.
Well, when it comes to barriers, it's almost that what is great about being a female in property can also be a barrier as well. You've got so many more sort of stereotypes and perceptions to overcome, because property is traditionally very male dominated, and usually older males as well. And I have been called a little girl before, which is frustrating, and means that you probably have to do a lot more to overcome that negative perception than if that wasn't ever there in the first place. Doesn't really hold me back. I'll still keep doing what I'm doing. It just probably makes me a bit feistier and sharper, and I get more and more so over time.
Next question. What was your first big win, or the moment that you realised you were on the right path?
So my first win was when I had my first long stay booking. This was a booking for 3 months, and it came in when I was just 6 months into the business. And for me, that was a big moment, because I looked at the revenue that was coming in and the expenses that had to go out for that particular property, and I was in profit by 300%, which was absolutely amazing. So for me, that was a really, really big deal, and it sort of solidified, my decision into going into this business. Coming from the nursing background, everyone told me that you couldn't do it. First of all, it would be really, really hard, which it is to some extent, but anything that's worthwhile having comes at a cost. But for me, that was the big moment that made me decide that whatever happens, I'm definitely going to see this through.
So the first moment I realised I was on the right path, in all honesty, was at the event that I attended, where somebody stood up years ago now and talked about rent to rent, and I thought, oh my goodness, this strategy literally sounds like it was created for me. And I just knew with every bone in my body that that was what I was going to do as an investment strategy in property. The second win on the same subject was my first deal. I didn't have a script when I started rent to rent. Having been in sales for so many years, I thought I'd just make up my own, because I knew that with the right attitude and perseverance and commitment, it would work. And I called an agency and I said, do you know, I just wonder if there's any properties on your books that maybe you don't want or you're struggling to let, that maybe I could have. And the guy said, just put it in an email, and pretty much hung up on me. So I did. I put it in an enthusiastic, packed email saying all the things I was going to do to this property as a rent-to-rent agent. And he wrote back and said, do you know, the objections I keep getting from landlords are A, B and C. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. You're actually calling agents and telling them what I've told you. So I answered the objections, and the very next day, a lovely landlady called me and said, you know, I hear what you do, and I wonder if you'd like to come and view the property. It turns out the agent said to me, you know, we couldn't let it. So we had two choices really, either to give it back to the landlord with our tail between our legs, or at least give it back through you, having found somebody that could make it work. So it was a bit of a string to their bow. Then as I looked around the property, it was my first ever viewing. And the lady that showed me round just said, so what do you think? What are you going to offer me? And I hadn't really worked out the figures yet, because the agent hadn't told me what she was asking for, and it was my first meeting. So I said, well, usually, as if I'd ever done it before, usually we offer about £50 per person per week. And I thought to myself, I'll go in really low, and then if she says no, I can go home, work out the figures and negotiate. And she just said, fine. I thought, pardon? So that was it. So I went out to the car and I called Alex and I said, oh my God, Alex, my fiance, guess what? I've just done my first rent-to-rent deal. And he said, signed? And I said, no, not yet. He said, well, then you haven't done a deal, have you? I said, yes, but she said yes. And I negotiated £50 per person per week. And he said, and is that good? I said, I don't know, but she said yes. And that was it. It turned out to be a property, my first ever property that cash flowed over £1,000 a month. It was £1,000.71 to be exact.
My first win was just the sense of pride and accomplishment when I'd finished my first developments and actually made some money and was able for the first time in many years to contribute to the family income. I just felt that finally I'd found something that not only was creative and exciting and interesting, but also allowed me to have my own financial independence once again.
From the moment I realised that I wanted to go out there and buy the first investment property, it actually took 18 months for that to become a reality. A lot of blood, sweat and tears, reading a lot of books, did it all by myself. And when I first ended up at a property event, it was a progressive property event back in October 2014, when I ended up there and I heard pretty much in one day what it had taken me 18 months to learn, well, it gave me the confidence that actually, gosh, if I could, this is what I've done by myself, imagine what I could do with other people around. And also gave me the confidence in progressive, because what I'd learnt myself, they were telling me back. And I guess that was a real turning point for me, and a real win, I suppose, because suddenly I surrounded myself by loads of people who were all on the same path, had the same vision and the same drive, and that was a real game-changing moment for me. And so the win wasn't necessarily as such buying a property, it was that kind of mindset shift and that change to think that I can do this in a big way, but I'm going to need the right people around me, and hey, these people are right here.
My first big win was when I had my offer accepted on my first buy-to-let property, which was a 4-bedroom house of multiple occupation in Leeds, and that was 17 years ago. And it felt like a huge win and a huge sign that I was on the right track, because I managed to secure the deal slightly below the asking price, and that property went on to triple in value in a very short period of time.
What's the biggest difficulty you've faced being a woman in a traditionally very male-heavy industry?
So I wouldn't necessarily call it a difficulty, but as a female entrepreneur, I do have a really big, fat, independent streak. So I sometimes find it challenging when people judge and assume that I couldn't have done what I've done by myself from scratch. And if I'm really honest, it's probably just my ego being bruised. It's not actually a physical difficulty or problem, because it doesn't change anything. But, you know, I've just had people be really surprised when I say that I started with nothing. Born in Brixton and grew up on a council estate, left school with no A-levels, didn't go to university, got my first job as a cleaner at the age of 13, had 2 jobs by the age of 16. That when I say I've created the business that I have from scratch with no money and no previous property education or experience, they kind of think, there's something going on here. It's like they don't quite believe it. That I've done it by myself. And I just once had a lady say to me, when I was talking about she wanted to come on the academy, and she said, do you mind if I ask a question? And I said, there's no question I wouldn't answer. And she said, you know, I really get that you've done well, but could you really have done it by yourself, like honestly? And I was just so wounded, because that's exactly what I've done. I've done it completely by myself from scratch with no money and no support. All I did was a course and I made it happen.
To be honest with you, I don't think it has been more difficult. My first dream I ever had was to be a singer and a dancer in the West End. And that, I tell you, is flooded with young females, skinny females, and I was just one of many. And that made it really hard to stand out. Whereas in property, I'm kind of the exception, not the rule. And that means it's a lot easier to stand out, to be a bit different, to be you, to be unique. And as long as you've got courage in your convictions and you've got people around you who give you permission to be strong and be who you are, I think it's just a massive benefit, and I wouldn't change anything. So I really wouldn't see it as a barrier or a difficulty being a woman in property. I'd see it as a massive benefit.
I think the biggest difficulty that I've faced in this industry is being taken seriously right off the bat, because I've had so many meetings lined up and I've showed up on my own, and the guy that I'm meeting has said to me, "Where's your partner?" And I'm like, "I don't have a partner, it's just me." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And as we've had the conversation, it's just kind of come up that for them, they're finding it really hard to believe that I've been able to achieve all of this on my own, especially because I'm a mum. So I would say that, yeah, the biggest difficulty is being taken seriously right off the bat. But I just carry on. I show them what I have and I kick ass. And that's what really matters and counts at the end of the day.
Which female business role models inspire you and why?
Rather than thinking of the Ellen DeGeneres and the Oprah Winfrey, I like to look at smaller women who are making a difference in their industries, and just people who are getting up every day and doing things. So people like Shah Wasman, I think, is doing a great job for women in business. I really admire her. Even on a smaller scale as well, Annie and Hella from Sister Snog, they inspire so many women through their women's business non-networking groups. And these are the sorts of women who inspire me, not the big names.
So probably my biggest female role model is Karen Brady. I love her because she just seems still, despite being clearly very successful, very down to earth, still has a very good sense of humour. But she's not afraid to speak her mind and say what she thinks. But she also always just looks so elegant and together. And so if I can be just a little bit like that, I'd be very happy. So yeah, Karen Brady, you rock.
My biggest female business role model is Oprah Winfrey. And the reason I choose Oprah Winfrey is because I feel that she comes from a very enlightened place, and that she genuinely wants to help people and to make the world a better place and to leave a legacy. And I find her spirit and her energy and her values and her drive very, very inspiring.
I actually have just one female business role model, and it's Oprah. I look up to Oprah because she's a woman who came from absolutely nothing in an industry that's really male dominated and quite difficult to break into even for men. But she persevered and she made it work, and today she's one of the most successful women in the world who are in TV production. So it's definitely Oprah. She's overcome so many difficulties, everything from racism to just, being people not taking her seriously. She's overcome that. And so to me, I look up to her because she's one person who didn't give up. And to me, it just inspires me and motivates me to do a lot better, because if she can do it, then I can do it.
My biggest business female role model isn't somebody that many of you might know, but her name is Liz Volpe. She actually spoke from Australia at Project Inspire, one of my ventures, just last year, so some of you may know who she is. But she was the owner of multiple businesses, and especially the business that I worked for when I moved to Australia. And she trained me from a face-to-face 100% cold calling on the street commissioned sales girl, all the way up to an international award-winning sales and marketing manager over the course of 5 years. And she's taught me everything that I know about being positive, having a positive mental attitude, never quitting, setting goals, always keeping focused and keeping heading in the right direction. She's taught me resilience. She's taught me to never quit. There's nothing she hasn't taught me, and it's because of that 5-year career that I had with her as my mentor / idol. / guardian angel that has enabled me to just come into the world of property and really create what I've created. It's that training, like the Royal Marines of attitude and business and entrepreneurship. So she is my absolute idol.
And to wrap up, one final question. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to other females already working in this industry or considering a career in this industry?
My biggest piece of advice to ladies getting started in property would be just to be really clear on what it is that you are trying to achieve and get out of it before you start. Because once you get into this property world, you are surrounded by lots of people doing lots of very cool sounding, exciting stuff. And you can get pulled off on lots of random different tangents. So just be really clear about what it is you want and make sure every decision that you make moves you towards that. And probably just be a little bit selfish as well, because it's very easy to worry about others and worrying about if other people are okay, when actually we need to focus on ourselves and be a little bit selfish first of all to make sure that we can help other people much better in the long run.
Don't compare yourself to others. Ever. Have faith in you. Keep doing what you're doing and don't get distracted by what other people are doing. And don't compete with anyone else. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Just have faith in you and your abilities. Keep learning, keep growing. Never stop trying to improve yourself. And you're the only person on the planet that can be you. So go for it and have faith in yourself.
So the one piece of advice that I'd give other women who were trying to get into property investment would be to have a mentor or a coach. I didn't have that when I started. I literally had to learn as I went on, and I made a lot of mistakes, very expensive and emotionally draining mistakes. So if I had a coach or a mentor or somebody to look up to, then perhaps some of those mistakes wouldn't have been as exaggerated, as big as they were. So that the one piece of advice that I'd give to everyone who's trying to get into this business, especially if you're female and you've got a family, then it would be to find a coach or a mentor who's available to work with you with the resources that you've got.
My golden nuggets for any females looking to start into the world of property would be to read Rich Woman by Kim Kiyosaki. Remember, there's no right or wrong. If it doesn't fit for you, it's fine. It's just what's right for you, and it was the perfect advice for me. So that's a great start. And the second thing would be just don't be nervous to be vulnerable. You know, if you have questions or you don't know what you're doing, ask people. There are people out there that have been through what you're going through and have been at the beginning. And what tends to happen is we go through our journey thinking that we're the only person that's had that tough time or this tough time or that amount of self-doubt or this concern. And it's not personal to you, it's part of the journey as a property investor. So you must reach out to people for support because you'll get there 10 times quicker. It's kind of silly not to.
So the advice I have for other women thinking about a career in property is just to do it, just to get out there and do it. It's not scary, and it is a welcoming industry. There are lots of women here in the property industry who will welcome you in and are happy to give you the advice that they wish that they had when they were starting out. And it also, if you're a stay-at-home mother, it's a fantastic way to work in a flexible way around children's school or naps or whatever it might be. So I would really encourage other women to consider it as a career option.
That's all we've got time for today. Massive thanks to Katrina, Nicole, Liz, Emilia and Jackie. As someone starting out in this industry, it's really inspirational to see what these 5 ladies have been able to achieve in a relatively short space of time. If you liked today's video, you can head over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel to see more content like this. Equally, we are going to be releasing this as both a podcast and a video, so feel free to subscribe to the podcast too.
I literally can't move my head because I've hair clipped the microphone to my roll neck. Because you couldn't hear me before. So if I look like a statue, that's why. Too funny.
Let's get started. You're really doing my tips then.
Literally.
We're about to consider a career in this industry. Wrong. Okay.
Be clear on what you want and go out there and get it. I wish you all the best, ladies.